One thing that strikes you when you walk around Cameroon's capital, Yaoundé, is just how many images there are of the president, Paul Biya. Billboards credit him with any hint of progress or development in the country. There are curated snapshots of his presidency scattered around town, painting a picture of a leader who is active and engaged. But the irony is that while Cameroonians are bombarded with these images every day, they very rarely get to see their president in person.
This hyper-presence of Biya'S' image, even though he himself is absent, is not only ironic, it's an irony within the tragedy because he's an absent president, absent in decision-making, absent in the management of the country. Simply put, this is a caricature of a dictatorship.
Le couple présidentiel en route pour l'Europe, Paul et Chantal Biya ont quitté le Cameroun cet après-midi pour un séjour privé dans une ambiance de départ très conviviale à l'aéroport international de Yaoundé-Nsimalen.
What we hear is national radio announcing the president has left the country for a brief private stay in Europe. You don't know whether the president has gone to which European country. You don't know what has taken him there. So they use billboards, they use all the messages, all the propaganda to give a semblance of someone who cares for the people, but which is a sharp contrast of what the president is.
For decades, Cameroonians have seen their president 2, 3, a maximum of 5 times a year. They are the official speeches of 31st of December and 11th of February. We may catch a glimpse of him as he lands from a visit, and he may say 1 or 2 words to the press as he walks down from the plane. So he has always been absent from the public stage, but we knew he was there. People were sure that he was alive.
That assumption was put to the test last year. In early September, Paul Biya attended the China-Africa Forum in Beijing. He then vanished for 42 days.
Not only was he absent, he was delinquent on his presidential duties. He was announced to be at the UN, he did not show up. He was announced to be at a conference in France, he did not show up. So this is what caused a lot of debate about whether he was alive or not, which is the most ridiculous thing for a country, that we should be debating whether our president is alive or not.
Paul Biya could have ended all of that speculation with a public appearance. He chose not to. Instead, his government, the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, or CPDM, banned the country's media from reporting on his health. Consider the position that put journalists in. Their 91-year-old president, who had ruled Cameroon for 42 years, was missing for 6 weeks, and they weren't allowed to mention it.
So it tells you about the level of media freedom in Cameroon, that an executive gets up in the morning and signs an order saying the media should not report about a certain topic, a topic that is of interest to the people. The people have the right to know where the president is. The people have the right to know if the president is well or unwell.
The media may be banned from reporting on the president's health, but Cameroonians know that Biya's days are numbered, and there's no succession plan in place. So factions within the ruling party have begun to jostle for position to keep their access to state resources. There's a power struggle underway, one that is having dire consequences for journalists.
No one wants to live in exile. To live in exile is a form of imprisonment. As you're unable to return to your country, it was never my choice. But unfortunately, I had to go into exile because, as they say, it's better to be a living dog than a dead hero.
Paul Tutor worked as a journalist in Cameroon and was a frequent critic of human rights abuses under Paul Biya's government. In 2022, he was abducted, tortured, and left for dead in an attack that nearly left him blind. A year later, Tutor fled the country with his wife and went into exile in Germany after his friend and colleague, Martinez Zogo, was also abducted and tortured. Only Zogo wasn't left for dead. He was murdered.
Ce qu'on a fait à Martinez Zogo, c'est un signe.
What was done to Martinez Zogo was a sign. They cut off his tongue, broke his knees, and they forced an object down his nose. His body was then dumped in public for everyone to see. It was a warning to Cameroonians to show them what can happen. A message to say that as soon as you speak out, we will burn you.
Dès que vous allez parler, nous allons vous brimer.
Martinez Zogo was a radio journalist. He was carrying out an investigation on 2 budgetary lines of the national budget of Cameroon that were being completely mismanaged, and money being given to businessmen who were either in the CPDM or affiliated to specific officials in the Biya regime.
For us, it was a signal that elements within Cameroon and probably Paul Biya'S government wanted to send a signal that journalists have no right to interfere in their business. The death of Martinez Zogo sent shockwaves across the African continent and eventually led to us, his friends and colleagues, to decide to launch an investigation into his death.
Anas Araimeyawu Anas is a Ghanaian investigative journalist who, for his own safety, keeps his face hidden. He leads the network of African investigative reporters and editors. When news of Zogo's murder broke, Anas sent a team to Cameroon to pick up where the journalist had left off. What they found was that the documents Zogo was using to back up his claims came from within Paul Biya'S administration, and they weren't leaked by accident. Someone inside the government intentionally fed them to Zogo, hoping to take down a rival faction led by a media mogul named Jean-Pierre Umugu Belinga.
We know from our investigation that Belinga himself was aspiring to being a possible successor of Paul Biya. So what our project has done is to peel the onion whilst we look into the Martinez Zogo matter. It's complex, it's political, it's a case of someone leaking information to our colleague and probably following up to harm him.
So unfortunately, Martinez Zogo was caught in the middle of this fight between factions. And this investigation really revealed the 2 things that we know as Cameroonians. We know we have a 42-year dictatorship. We know that we are governed by corruption and violence. This is what maintains this regime in power. But in the Martinez Zogo case, we saw the most extreme, most violent forms of the abuse that citizens are undergoing in the Republic of Cameroon.
Media mogul Jean-Pierre Umugu Belinga and his alleged accomplices have been charged with Zogo's murder and are awaiting trial, but don't expect a verdict anytime soon. Impunity, not accountability, has been the feature of Paul Biya'S 42-year rule. So for those who challenge the system, justice is hard to come by.
Thank you for watching. Hit that like button and leave us a comment to let us know what you thought about anything we covered this week. And don't forget to follow us on social media. The links are in the description, and you can also subscribe to our newsletter for updates.